All right. Hopefully this will be a good one. All right, so on page 4.02, does everybody have the northeast? Did everybody find the northeast?
I found it, something we opened.
Yeah,
It has like a lock on it.
Oh, the one I'm in would have a lock.
Yeah.
And there would be another copy right next to it without a lock. That's the one you want to download.
Oh, okay, all right.
Without the lock. Okay.
All right, so that's
What are we getting here?
The one without the lock. There's two. The one I have open will lock. You got it.
There's more.
Yeah, the date. Go ahead. Go in the date class and open that one. That's okay. Well, you shouldn't open it
Oh,
from
okay, I
the
see.
server though. You have to download it because you won't be able to save anything because you don't have access to the server. So you got to download it into some kind of medium. I don't know what kind you got. So we feel like it's better to keep the lights on for this, and if you feel like you can't see it, I will turn the lights off. Are you okay? Or is it too light because, are you? Because the light is a big deal when you're doing these videos. Okay, when you get it loaded down onto your discs, then just open it. And I'm just going to go, because you weren't here, most of you weren't here last week, I'm just going to go through the different parts of the access and how we get to each one of these and how they're related. The first thing we did, we made tables, and the tables were the employer and the NAICS and the position table. So that if you look in them, this has information about the employer table goes in the employer table, and then in that employer table there's an employer ID, and so that in the next table, you look in the position table, we'll look in that first, you have an employer ID also, and all the positions under that employer would be in the position table with the employer ID only and not all the employer information. So we don't have to repeat information multiple times. So that's why we made two tables, one with the positions with an employer ID in it, and one with the employer information with an employer ID in it. And that's important to know because the employer table has one ID for each employer. So they're all unique IDs, and that's your primary keys. And then your position table has those employer IDs, and there's multiple positions for each employer. So so they're not unique in this table, but they do have a position ID which is unique, and that's your primary key for that table. And then in your employer ID is your foreign key. So just so you get those terms down. And then we had this other table that just has codes in it that codes what kind of employment it is. So that's the tables. And remember, we designed them by creating those fields and giving them a type and some information about the field down here. And you can either be in design view, which is this one, or data view, which is this one. The next thing we did, and that was last week. Well, the first class we did like an overview, a couple of things, and then last week we did the queries, and that's where a number of you weren't here to do them. And what queries? When we did the queries, first we had to relate the tables because we couldn't get the tables information out of two tables unless they were related to each other using those keys. So we clicked on this relationship icon, and we related the tables by the IDs. So when I showed you that employer table, it had all the employer IDs in it, and when I showed you the position table, it had employer ID field, which would have multiple employers because there's many positions for an employer. So that's a 1. Based on the employer ID field, that's a one-to-many position. I mean, one-to-many table condition under the relationships. And the NAIC code table would only have one code per occupation or whatever, and then it's related to the employer table by the NAIC code field, and it's a one in this one for this table and many for this table. So those 1 to infinity, see that infinity figure up there, means one to many. So it's many in one table and just one reference to it in the other. So we did that last week. And then we created queries using basically the position in the employer table. So here's one of them, and then you had design view for this, for a query, and data view. And you notice when you pick up the two tables and then tell what you want to show, they come from both tables, and so the two tables would be put up here on the top with the add key, which if you want to put them up later, there's the show table, and it has the three tables in it, and you add them up into this space up here, and then you can choose the employer name, the city from this one, the state from this one, openings from the position table, position title from the position table, start date, end date from the position table. So then it hooks it up using that employer ID field for the queries. That's basically what queries are, and then you run them with the run key. And it comes out with the employer name over here, and then what kind of positions over here that employer would have. And you can sort it on this field so that you can see there's now multiple positions per employer. See that? So that's one to many again. Okay, so then that brings us up to forms. So queries are just getting the information out of the tables in a different order or consolidating different information together. Tables are where the information resides, multiple tables. And now forms are how to get it into the tables, the information, in a more, an easier form of data entry. So that's what forms do. We put the information into the two tables using one form. So if you have a form, which we're going to get to later, that you want to put an employer name up at the top, and that'll go into the employer table, and then all the positions under it in the form, instead of doing it in two separate tables and then having to put that ID in every time you put one employer in the employer table, and then you go over to the position table and you put multiple positions in and have to keep putting that information in with that ID for the employer. Instead, we make up a form that you can put the employer at the top and then all the positions under it. And that's how you're supposed to put things into a database. So you design a form to do it. And that's what we're going to do tonight. So, we'll go to the forms area. And I don't know if you're having any trouble with it, but I know some of the others in my other classes are having trouble with which area to be in, tables, queries, forms, or reports. So when you do your exercises in here, it kind of gives you an idea where you're supposed to be. And this chapter here has both forms and reports, so you have to know which one to be in. So forms. We're on page 4.03, and we're going to create a form using the form wizard. And basically we're going to use the form wizard for the forms and reports tonight. So the first thing we're going to do is say new, or we could do create form by using wizard here, or you can do the new and then form wizard here. So I'm going to do the new and form wizard here. And then it says down here, choose the table that you're going to use for your form. So we're going to use, for the first form, we're going to use the position table. So we're going to do a down arrow here, and then go down to position, and make sure position is here in the window. and then say OK. Which brings up the next window. So it says table position, and then it has all the fields in that table here. And we're going to bring over just some of those fields. We're not going to bring over all of the fields. So we're going to bring over the position ID field, the title, the employer ID, the wage, the hours per week. We're not bringing over the experience right now. We're going to do it later. And this is so that when it comes out in the form, it's in that order. So that's why we're doing it in this way. Start date, end date, openings, and then experience. Okay, so all of our fields are over there. Then we're going to do next. And you have a number of ways that the form can be displayed. And these are canned ways that you can display them in the wizard. And later on, if we were to get into more design, you can design your own form in whatever way you want. But we're going to go with, there's the column, the tabular, the data sheet, the justified, and then there's a couple of table kind of things, but we're not using information for tables in this particular, for charts. So, we're going to pick the column, and we're going to say next. And then in the form you can have it in a lot of different pretty ways. So these are the different ways you can have it. The blends, and you look over here, you can see what they are. Blueprint, expedition, so they're just basically different color schemes, and if you have a color printer, they're good if you're going to print out the form. But normally forms go on the screen, so it's a screen operation, so you'll have all the colors nice. International, rice paper, sandstone, standard, and then you just want to go through them all and look at them all just to see what you could get. And what they want us to use is expedition, so we're going to click on expedition, and we're going to go next. And then we're going to give this form a name, and the form's name is position space data. And then down here you see there's a bunch of different options. So you can open the form to view or enter information. You can modify the form, or you can do the help on it. So we're just going to open it to the form to view or enter information. So we're going to do finish. Maximize the view, and that's your form. So you can put information into that form. If you wanted to change the design of the form, you can put it over into design view. And this is design view. And you can change the positions of the different information, or you can pull out the form so it's got bigger space, and you can do a lot of different things with, like these, the hours per week. It makes it the length of the field, basically, of how many characters to put in it. So that, and you can change that too. So you can do a lot with the form. Let's go back into the data view. And where'd my toolbox go? I'm going to minimize it just so I see. My toolbox is missing. So I can open my toolbox, I'm pretty sure. There's that tool icon. There's an auto form. that was it, but I don't see it anywhere. Do you have your toolbar? I had it there for a minute, but I don't seem to have it anymore. Do you have that little toolbar that came up that I moved? Oh, maybe you have to be in the design view for that. No, I lost my other toolbar. I'm doing good.
I have it in the design book at the bottom of the other.
Oh, okay, that's it. Then I have to find it. I gotta get it back. I gotta get my toolbar back. Form view. Design view. Okay, so did you see what I did? I have to get in this here. And there's a little, and you find the auto format button on the form design. It does, I don't even see it here. Auto format. Because that's how you get back into, unless, oh, it's up here. Here's another toolbar. Do you have your toolbar up here? Okay, that's where it is. Because that's where you get back into that, how to make it a different color. And then you can make it a different color if you want to. So, we're going to make it, we had it Expedition, right? We're going to make it Standard. All right. And then go look at it in Standard. Did that change? That doesn't look like Standard to me. Back in Design View. And I said Standard. I say OK. And it didn't. Oh, maybe I have to click on the. It should have changed it. Did anybody get theirs changed?
Yeah, mine changed.
Yeah, so mine isn't changing for some reason. Strange. Oh well, so you get the idea anyways. I'm not going to figure out why mine isn't doing it. Okay, so then we're going to say save. So we save that if you had that change, and it'll save that. Okay, so now we're going to go through the position data form just to see how you navigate through a form. When you put in information into a form, you can tab through it and then put more information in, like this. I'm putting tabs in it. And then if you want to go to the next record, you have the navigation tool down below, or the previous record, or the end record, or the beginning record. So you have the navigation, or if you want to put in a specific record, like record 63, you can actually put that in there and then an enter, and you can go to that record. And you can change the information or add information into it, so you could go and add a new record with this add new record, or there's an add new record up there also. It looks just the same, only it's red with a little star next to it, so you can add a new record in if you need to. You can also find data using this form, so if you, let's go to the first record again by clicking on the first record button. And let's position ourselves in the employee ID field, and then we have those binoculars, the find key. And those are common throughout all of Microsoft. Are you able to see okay? Is everybody able to see okay? Okay. And then do the find. And we're going to find. And when you do that, you see you're looking in the employer ID field. And we're going to look in the whole field. And we're going to search all of the table. And this is really based on the table. And we're going to find record 10145. It's not record number, but employee number, ID 10145. And then we're going to say find next. And it's going to find the employer ID that's 10145. And then we're going to say find next again, and it finds another one that has employer ID 10145, because these are the positions. And there's more than one position per employer. And then if we say find next, it's finding another one. And when it's done finding it, it'll give you this, that it's done. The window will pop up, and you say OK. So you can find different information if you want to using the form. There's also characters, like if you don't know exactly the number you're looking for, so if we're still finding a number, you can use asterisks to fill it in. So if you want to find any of the employer IDs, 101, 34, 35, 64, 65, anything, you put 2 stars in here, that's a wild card. So anything that starts with 101 and anything after it. So there's 10150, 10135. If there was a reason to do that, I don't know that there's any coding for 101 or 103 or whatever, but sometimes you code things with the first 3 numbers meaning something, and then the last numbers don't mean as much, so you do it with a wild card. And you can find next throughout the whole database. And when you're done, you can cancel out. So once you find a record that you like, you can go ahead and print preview it. And just print that. I don't see my print preview up here either. Oh, here it is. And you can see all the records are down here. If you want to use the magnifying glass to see, they'll print per page. Then they'll go on to the next page. The same thing here, only it's per page for the form, and all the records are there. And you can print out all the pages, or one page, or that. Or if you say File Print, you can choose whatever pages you want. And if you select one record, this will be, the select record will be highlighted, and you can just go with the selected record. I'm not going to print it because it's probably quite a few pages. Okay, so let's go back in out of the print preview and go back into the regular view. So we'll close the print preview. And we're going to change some information in the position data. So we're going to go to record 10. So we'll go down to the bottom, and we're going to put in record 10 here. And then enter. And you should come up with a record that's 2033 lifeguard. And we're going to change the information in it to put this. We're going to put hours per week, 35. So we're going to change that. So we're going to, and once you do this, it changes in the table as well. So those tables that we saw in the beginning, in the position table, that will change it in there. And then we're going to change the start date field to 6:30 instead of 6:15. So we're just going to change that middle value to 30, and then go on to the next. And you can change that, but we're not going to change it. You're going to use the find and delete a record. You can use the find to find a record you want to delete. So, see, when I'm not in the field that I'm finding, I'm in end date now. It will come up with end date down here because I started when I put in the find, instead of being in the employer ID, I was in the end date field. So when I did the find, it'll come up with the end date down here as the look-in, and you'd have to change it. You'd have to change it either, well, it doesn't have all of them when you when you do the down arrow. So you gotta go back up here, cancel that, and go into the employer ID, and then do the find. So it says look in employer ID. And then we're going to find 2072. Find next. Oh, did we already delete it? Maybe in mine it might have already gotten deleted because I'm using the day class and I probably already deleted it. But when you find it, you can just delete it. Here's the delete key. And then when it asks you if you want to delete the record, you say yes. And now we're going to put in a new record. So we're going to do the new record, just like we do in the table, the new record symbol. Or you could use the one down below. And then we're going to put in the information that we want in our new record. And mine might not work because I'm using that database that we already, because the key has to be unique for position ID, so it'll probably not allow me to do this. But if you're using the one that you downloaded from, so just put tabs in and then enter the data. Experience is just like a yes or a no, and they wanted it blank. So we should have another record, and it's record 65. And once it's in, just do a save on it and then close the form out. So if you want to go in the position table and see if we entered in a 2130, you got to go down into the position table, 2130. And yeah, it's the last one in there. All right, we're going back in the form again. So the way to get in a form that you've already made, instead of making a new form, is to go into the forms area, to double click on the position data form, and we're going to do a spelling check, and what it'll do is check the spelling throughout the database, and the spelling check is the spelling icon, ABC. I don't see the check with the ABC on mine. Oh, right here. I'm having a hard time seeing the icon wherever it is. And so it says here that reservationist is not in the dictionary. So do we want to change reservationist to reservationists? And apparently we don't want to do that, so we're going to say ignore all on that one. And the next thing we come up with is greenskeeper should be 2 words suggested, greens space keeper. And we're going to say change all on that one. And the spelling check is complete. So it's a simple spell check just like you do in Word. Say OK. All right. So we're done with this form. So we're going to close that form out. We're going to make another form. And the next form we're going to make is going to be a form that has a main form and a subform. The one that I was describing in the beginning, where you have the employer information on the top and then all the positions under it, that it goes with the employer. And the way you do that is we're going to have to do it with 2 tables instead of just 1 table. That first form was made with 1 table, and the second one is going to be made with 2 tables. So we're going to do it. We're in the forms area. Is everybody keeping up all right? All right, good. And we're going to go new. And we're going to do it with the form wizard again. And this time we're going to choose the employer table to begin with. So here's the employer table. You got to go down the down arrow. And then say OK. And from the employer table, we're going to put over the employer ID. the employer name. And remember when we were making, well, you weren't all here, but when we were making the queries, we didn't actually bring over the ID every time, because it doesn't mean as much as in a form. The form has to have the ID because you're entering it in. So basically you'd want most, when you're making a form up, you want most of your information so that you put it in all the fields. This one we're just taking the employer name. I got that, okay. Contact first name, contact last name, phone. And then we're going to go up here and get a second table. So we're going up here and get the position table, because remember we're going to have a main form with the employer information and a sub form with position information. So the position information, we're going to take the whole thing over. So we're going to use the double arrows. And all of the position information goes over. And you notice when we have all of the employer information over and all the position information over, there's two fields that overlap, which are the employer ID field, and they make a distinction by putting an employer dot employer ID on that one and a position dot employer ID on this one. So we're going to put this one back. We only need one of them because they're the same thing. But they're there for a purpose because of the relationship, and so when you put things into the form, they know where to put them in the table.
No matter which one you put back in?
I would put back the foreign key, which is the position dot employer ID. And the primary key is this employer ID. And notice when you put the position dot employer ID back, the employer dot comes off of the employer ID, so you don't have it on there anymore. Alright, so then we're going to go next. We got all the information we need. And when we get to this screen, you see how it's going to set it up. It's going to put the employer's information on the top of the form, and then the position information on the sub form, which is down below. And that's what we want, so we're going to go next. And then we still have the opportunity to pick out a format. And we're just going to use the data sheet format. It's the same thing, the tabular, the data sheet, and then the chart and the table. And then we got to pick one of these formats that the colors for it, and we're going to use standard, which is what it is. And next. And we're going to give it a name, employer space positions. We're going to open the form to view or enter information, and we're going to say finish. And here it is. So when we enter information, we're going to enter all of the employer information, and then we can enter all of the information about the positions under that employer under it. And you notice there's two navigation tools in it. So the first navigation tool up here close to this one is for the position table information, and the one down below at the bottom is for the employer. So if we go forward on the employer, you see that the positions will change for that employer also, because they're picked up by that employer ID information. We could keep the employer ID down here, and see then you would have employer ID field down here, and it would have 10135 for both of those positions in it. Just so it would make a good point. It'll show you that they're up here and here. But for a good form that you're creating for a person that's data entering, you wouldn't do that, because then they would have to enter it. Alright, whoops. Alright, I think we can view this also in, and if you want to, the thing is that in this database there aren't too many with positions that go past the number 3. prepositions. I don't even think there's any. So really, this navigation tool is not very useful. But if you had something went way down, like 10 things under this employer, you would use this navigation tool up here, and then you go to the first record or the last record on that. And if you want to modify the design again, you go in Design View. If you wanted to enter more, this thing came up. It doesn't normally, I don't think, but it did on mine. Did it come up on yours? No, I didn't think so. To open that, it's the field list. It's next to the toolbox. And when you open that, you've got the list of fields that are possibilities on these two forms. And so to get an extra one, if you say you wanted address now, you just pull it and drag it and drop it in here, and you would have the address in there. I don't really want my address in there, so I'm going to cut it out. And then you can cut it out. And you can cut the form, cut the other fields out if you don't really want them in there after you put them in there. Or you can add them in and change them. And you notice this isn't, I'm going to take that out of there. Move this over. Try to move it over. If you click on, this one does not take up the whole space it could, and it's got a small window here. So if you want to change the length of that field so that it all shows up a little better in there, click down here, and it's got handles that come, you click down on the form header, and the handles come around the subform, and you can pull on those handles sideways if you want to pull them out and get that form a little bit bigger. And then you can pull on this form and move it over. And then you can pull on this one and move it over. So things look a little better when they're in. Let's see how that looks now. I don't know if it looks any different, but it does show everything now. Oh, this one's not showing all. We can fix it in there too. Oh, now this one's not, but you can't fix this one over here. So you have to go back into Design View and pull it out a little bit more.
I can't get mine to do that for some reason.
Yours won't. It's hard to get the handles sometimes out. No, I did go over, did it?
I'm not getting any handles at all.
Gotta move this over. Nothing of yours is moving? You're not getting your handles?
I moved the whole thing out, but I'm trying to move this, I can't.
Oh, you gotta get on the edge there. You can get up there and then pull. And I don't know if it is pulling out, it didn't pull all the way for the end date. But you can always double click on the inside here and then pull it back out so that you get them all in. That double clicking works really good on to even out the white space, just like it does on Excel or in the tables. All right, then save it. Same, I already went over this navigation. So we're done with forms. So is there any questions on the forms? Because we're going to go on to reports. And reports is real similar to forms, except for when you do, forms is input and reports is output. So you're inputting the information in using the forms, and when you want to get it into a format where you want to print it out or send it to somebody with the information in it after you've maybe done a query and you put it into a report, so it formats it nicely. So that's the difference between forms and reports. One's input, one's output. But it's basically the same setting it up, and it's basically the same in Design View, where you have this grid and you can change things around in here. It would take a little while. I am not, I have to say, very good at spatial things myself, so looking at this and trying to figure out how it's going to look the best is not one of my better things that I do. But some of you might be more artistic, so you might like fooling around with how to set things up so they look really nice. Okay, so we can get out of the forms, and I'm going to say yes to that to save it. You see now we have 2 forms in there, and we'll go on to reports. I don't think reports is going to take too long, but I will give you, if you want a break now between forms and reports. Would you like a break, or would you just like to go on to reports? It's up to you. You want to drink of
I
water?
just want to get a drink of water.
All right, well then just go get a drink of water. I'll stop my recording for now. Hopefully I got 5 minutes, it's okay, right? So it's, all right. I mean, I need to get it home and have my head off. That's a, oh, this one didn't work either.
You want your feet?
All right, so reports. The reports, like I said, are output, and they're just formatting information so that it's in a nice design for somebody to read. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do another new report, sort of like a new form, and it comes up and it looks pretty similar to forms. And we're going to use the wizard again. And the first table we're going to use is the employer table. We're going to make one similar to that form. I think that's all we're going to make is one multi-table report. And so we're going to say, okay, after we put employer in, because that's the main where there's a main report and a sub-report, that's the main one. And then we're going to pull over what fields we want on our report. And that would be the employer ID, the employer name, the city, the state, the contact first name, the contact last name, and the phone. All right, that's the first part of our report. And then down on the bottom, we're going to put the positions. So we're going to go to the position table to get that information. And we're going to take all the information for the positions over. Did I do that right? Because that doesn't look right. Wait, I'm going to start over again because something didn't, I must have picked the wrong, I must have picked the wrong form because it said employer analysis. Did you see that? And I'm going to put this over, state. Oops, I forgot city. Okay. City, state, contact first name, contact last name. And then leave it at the bottom so the next form, make sure you get the right form this time, position, and then move all the position information over. There. And then move the position dot employer ID back so you don't need to get in there twice either. Alright, so then we're going to go forward. And it looks similar to the form, so the information on the employer is at the top and all the positions under each employer is underneath. And if you do this show me information, you can see examples of what you could have for your reports and how your fields. But the examples are of not this particular data, so you'd have to kind of get the idea of how this data that they put in their examples relates to our data. And you'd have to figure out, you know, the ID number would be here, and probably the employer name would be here, and then all the positions would be under this form. And you could do it that way. That's similar. This way. So there's a number of different ways you can put your reports together. And you can look at that at any time by doing show me more information on this screen. We're just going to go next. Okay, do we want to group it under something? And I don't think we're going to do. There's two group levels now, which is the employer information and then the position information. If you wanted to group it another way, like by city or something, or one of these other, you could put a third level in, but we're going to just keep it that way. And then you can sort it in any way, and we're going to sort it on the position ID in a descending order, I believe. So the way to get from ascending to descending order, you click on the ascending and it'll change to descending. And if you wanted it ascending, you click it back, so it's just a toggle. And then you go next. And outline 2 view is what we're going to choose. And landscape, remember the portrait and the landscape, so we're going to have it, because the information goes across the sheet it's pretty lengthy. A lot of times you put it in landscape. Alright, next. And here's all your choices again for your formatting. Corporate, I believe we're taking. And we'll go next. We're going to name it employer, employers, and position. And then preview the report, and we're going to say finish. And your report comes up with the employer information on the top and all of the different jobs under it in the bottom. We'll go down to, here's one with 2. And this is page 1 of 15. So you can navigate through the pages again with the navigation keys down here to see the different. Here's one with 3 under this particular employer. And you can use the zoom so you can get it smaller to look at how it's fitting on the page and zoom in bigger. And you can examine how things are fitting down here. You see, or let's go up higher so you can see better. See how that position ID doesn't fit in there, and that experience doesn't have an E on it. So things aren't fitting that good, so then you might want to go into design view and equal out some of these titles so that they fit better on the report and all come out. So we can go to design view just like we did with the other one. And it looks like it fits in here because it does have, well, the experience doesn't. The position ID looks like it does. But you click on the different titles and then you can pull them out with the arrows, with the handles. The middle arrow, basically your experience, click on that and pull the arrow over so that the E comes out. And that looks like it overwrites the start date. So you can click on that and then move the start date thing over. So you can change around these fields and make it look a little better. So once you do that, you can go back into the report view and see how it looks now. You can see that the E is on the experience and the position ID is up there and everything looks a little bit better. You can change this as much as you want, and there's all kinds of techniques to change it. So if you start having the right reports on your information that you're analyzing, you can further design it with the spatial ways to design it up and down and around the grid. A lot of times it doesn't really matter if they're real pretty, and these wizards do a good job of trying to get them as good as possible without you having to do much for your design. So that's kind of nice. The next thing we're going to do is put a picture so that there's a picture up on the top. Like if you had a logo for your company and you wanted to put it in your reports, you can put a picture in there. So we'll go into design view again, and we want the picture in the report header. So see, it says report header up here. I'm going to get rid of this field list. And if you click on the report header, it should turn black, and it knows that you're going to insert whatever it is you're inserting it into the report header. So we're going to insert picture, and then we're going to go find the picture. And the picture happens to be up on the server under tutorial. So we're going to have to go all the way up onto the server again. And it's under Microsoft Access this time. I'm pretty sure it's here. Tutorial 1 and tutorial. And you see the picture is called Globe. And the only thing, because of the file type down here, Windows Meta Files, is the type when we do an insert from this design area, the report, it will only come up with qualified file types.
I'm not able to get back on the.
You're not able to get back up onto the server. Well, if we go, are you in insert picture? Go back, over. Mine have it. There you go. It looks different in different spots, you know, when you go through the filing system, you have to actually know the exact path you want to take to get there. Okay, so then once you find the globe, just highlight it and say OK, and it goes into your report heading in the design view of your report, and it overrides your title, so you want to pull it over so that it goes next to the title, and I think they wanted it at like 6, so it's like over the side, 5 or 6, that was really far over. I would put it like right there. And once it's in there, you can put it back into the report view, and then go to the top, and here it is. And it should be on every page. Oh, it's not on every page. It's just on the first page it should be. I would have thought it'd been on every page. Now maybe that's not for every report header means the beginning of the report. So it's only on the first page. Go back. Okay. So then the only thing left to do is to print, and you can print, we only need to print, why don't we print one page out of this? So we just put file print from pages 1 to 1 and say OK, so we don't get 15 pages out. Make sure you just put 1 to 1. And then go put a name on your paper and hand it in for your in-class work. Oh, maybe I won't blunder here. All right, so what I thought I'd do to go over what we're going to do for the exam is, basically I'm going to take one of these, and you'll probably figure it out because I'm going to go over another one. One of the cases in the back of each one of the chapters, and then just do a couple of the items under it. And there'll be 3 chapters, the number 2, chapter 3 and 4, because number 1 is just a review, so we wouldn't do that. So what I'm going to do right now is, first I'm going to get out of this, and then I'm going to use Redwood Zoo Case 3 as an example as to what I might pick. I'm going to try to steer clear of the more the harder or the things that take a lot of time because, well, we have the same amount of time for our exam as we would have for class, in this class. In the day class, they get extra time for their exam, so anyway, I'm going to go ahead and open the Redwood Zoo. I hope it's on there. You don't actually have to do this if you don't want to. I'm just kind of going to review what will go on, and if you want to make notes, it might be even more advantageous than to do it with me. So, okay, I'm going to find it. It's under Tutorial 1 cases, and then Redwood, and then open. You see how I got that? That was a little easier than going through the whole. Actually, if you're on the network, you can open it. I'm on it. You're on your stick, so probably if you're on your stick and you have the whole tutorial 1 on it, that's a good thing. Because then you can do this new file thing and go over here and pick it out. I believe that this is the easiest way to find. If you've been working in a database, that database will be over there, and it's easiest to open it up from the new file menu over here. So that's how I do it. Okay, so the first thing I would do is I go to like Redwood Zoo, and I'll say start access and open the Redwood, and then create a table. So, and I'll give you the same thing as like they say create the table using the import table wizard. So I would say, you know, go new, be in the table area, which I wasn't, and go new, and then there's the table wizard right there, and then say OK. And wait, did they want the table? Oh, wait a second. Import table wizard. I don't think I did that, did I? All right, let's do this again. Table, new, import table wizard. Okay? They want, so it'll specify, but make sure when you're reading my instructions that you get the right thing, just like I did that time. So, import table, and say OK. And we're going to import the table for this particular one, pledge. So, we're going to bring in the table into this Redwood and say import pledge records and say OK. Remember we did this kind of, well this one had a pledge records in it, so I brought it in as pledge records 1. And then the next thing might say change the name to pledge. So remember we changed the name, we did a right click and we did a rename, and then just take away the records and make it pledge, like that. And the only way I'm going to know this, because I'm going to have you print this stuff out, is at the top of when you print tables out, it does say what name it is and stuff like that. So just so you'll know that that's part of it. And then I might have you enter some information, but probably not all of it, into a table, so you got to open it in. Like this is entering some values into the fields. So you'd have to do it in design view. If you're going to change the fields, you do it in design view. And the only thing that this one has you do is type primary key in here, foreign key in here, and foreign key in here. And then it has you change the format of pledge date field to month, day, day. So you got to go down to pledge date and put Y, like that. That's all I would do probably for that. I mean, it might be, it's not exactly going to be the same, but it's similar stuff like this. So just so you know, it's similar stuff like that. And then I'm going to go into the data view, and then they say you got to save it, so you say yes. Okay, so here's the data view. And then we might change a few so that I know that you know how to change data. It says change pledge $24.99, so go down to $24.99 and go across and change it to $150. So you just go over here and change this information here to $150. All right, and then change fund code for pledge 2332 to B03, something like that. And then I would have you print the table, so that's the first thing you print. So you just, and probably you just print the whole table. So then that would be all. You say, okay, that's the first thing. And then you go get it and put your name on it. So that you have your name on things. All right, that would be about what, I'm not going to have you do this advanced stuff like making up a table with different fields and putting, it just takes too much time, and also entering data. I'm trying not to have you enter data into it because that takes a lot of time too. All right, so then I'm going to have you cancel that and then go to, I'm going to type it up on a piece of paper though, so you don't have to use the, you can use the book for if you don't know how to do something. All right, then you go to the Redwood Zoo, which is on 3.44 for chapter 3. And I'm going to have you do the definition for the, this one's already done. I'll make sure it's not done. And then I want you to print that off because I want you to know how to do this, the one-to-many and the relationship, because otherwise you won't know how to do that if you ever have to do it. And then there's a thing in file that says, and I'll write this down, file print relationships, I'll say that, okay? And when you say print relationships, it comes up like this. And you're going to have to probably, why is it going like that? Oops. Print that. So it'll go over there. And then you go get it, and did it go over there? I don't hear it. Oh, there it goes. Okay, and then go get it and put your name on it. Make sure you put your name on it.
How do you print the relationship? I mean, how do you get the relationship?
I'll write it on the thing, but it's file. Well, you have to have the relationships up. So you have to know how to do this and know how to get the screen up at least. And then file, print relationships. It's under file. It's like file print. And then it comes up in a report like this, and then you have to print it.
Okay.
Or you can do a file print on it, you know, same thing. All right, so then once you get it related, I'll have you do a couple of queries. So, like, use Design View to create a select query for all pledges with a total pledged field value of greater than 200. So, you go into Queries, and then use Design View to open it, and then you'll have to pick whichever ones that you need here. You can actually pick them all at any time, and then if you don't use them, it doesn't really matter. So I would just, you know, all the things, except for this one's the same as this one, I think. So you don't need that one. So then you want to get these a little bigger because you can't really read the fields in them. Okay, so then it'll say just like this. I'm on number 2 on Redwood Zoo. No, I'm on number 3 on Redwood Zoo. So what it does when it seems to be kind of backwards the way it writes it. It writes it with what you want to do before what you want to put on your query. So you go down in here and see what fields you want on your query first, and then what that you want a total pledge field greater than 200. So donor ID. So you go up here and get donor ID. This is the one most of you missed this lecture. So hopefully you'll understand it. Then first name, then last name, then pledge number. So you have to go over here to the pledge table for that. Because if you don't see it on this one or this one, it's on one of them. It's going to be on one of them. Pledge, total pledged, and then fund names, which is in the fund, so fund name. And then it says you want to sort it in ascending order by total pledge. So you go to total pledge and see there's a sort line here. So under total pledged and under the sort line, you can just put a down arrow and pick either descending or ascending. And then it says, you got to dissect this thing. Up at the top it says, for all pledges with a total pledge field greater than 200, so you have to go down here on criteria, under total pledge, and put greater than 200. All right? And that's one query. And I probably will only have you do one query. But it'll be one like this amount of complication to it. Not real complicated, but enough so that you know how to use all the lines. It could have an or in it also, just to warn you. And then you run it, and then I know what the answer is, and you're going to print it. Okay? So then you just file print. And whatever's on them. And then go get it and put your name on it. And then we're going to go to forms. I'll do the same kind of thing. Redwood Zoo. And I'm going to have you do, we'll get on there, here. Oh, I'll probably have you put this in a name. I don't know what the name was for this. I think it was like large pledges or something. But I'll tell you what name to put it under. Okay, and then we're going to forms. And then under forms, I'm going to have you do a main form, sub form one like we just did tonight. And then a main form, main report, sub-report. So for this particular one, we're going to make it using the wizard. So we say new, form wizard, and then the donor table, it says right here is the primary table, so you put that first, and then you say okay. Then I tell you what fields to put in it, and that would be select all the fields. So I put them all over. And then the sub form is the second form. So that's the pledge table. And I'll tell you what to put over. The pledge number in this case is going over the fund code, the pledge date, total pledge, and that's good. And so we'll go next. Oops. You have chosen fields from this table. Oh, maybe the relationship is not correct in this one. I didn't check it. One too many. One too many. Donor. I'm going to see this relation thing is really important. I'm going to try and get rid of delete it. Okay, now I'm going to make the relationships up. I'm going to make them up hopefully right. And close that out. This is how you do the relationship. So let's see, it'd be donors. I got to figure out which is pledges. pledge number, pledge. One donor to right here. And then one fund code, too many fund codes over here. All right, I don't know if that's the way it was because I didn't do it, but I think it's okay now. And then save that. You might have trouble, hopefully you can decipher what the one-to-many thing is. That's gonna might get you on that relationship, so just so you know. So now we were doing the form and we were trying to do we're doing the donor first is the major form. And we took all the fields over from the donor. And then the second form was the pledge. And we took over pledge number, fund code, pledge date, and total pledge. Okay? And then next. And now must be our relationship. How that was set up was wrong. I don't know who set it up, but it was wrong. So now it comes out like it did on the other one, where all the donor information is up top and all the pledges are underneath, because that's the one-to-many situation. So whichever case it is, there'll always be some kind of one-to-many situation in it, so you have to decipher that. And when you do your restaurant, it's always that way too, so when you're doing your homework. So next, and then I will tell you what kind of a sheet I want it on. And this one was going to be on data sheet, or no, tabular. And then it'll be in expedition style. And then this is called, and then I'll tell you donors and pledges. And then open the form and form view finish. And then I might have you go to like a certain record, so I know that you know that the one navigates, you like go to record 11, so you go down the bottom usually, because these pledges underneath don't have too many multiples. And I would know which one that was, and then I would want you to print it. So file, print, and then selected record, so that you got the right one. So I know that you know how to get through them. And then when you print the selected record, you go back and get put your name on it. And then the last thing you're going to do is make a report. So you get out of this, and your relationship has to be right for the report also. So you want to make sure that relationship, if you're having trouble with that and you want me to try and explain it to you more, just come and see me. But I think you'll be all right. It's just the concept of that sometimes people have trouble with. Okay, so this one's the same type of thing. We're going to do a new with a report wizard, and we're going to do the same, the donor first, and from the donor we're going to select donor ID, first name, last name, and class. And then we're going to go for the pledge table. Normally you would take the one with the primary key first, like the donor would have the primary, and then the key that's the secondary key would be the second, because that has all the multiples on it. So the donor ID is the primary key for the donor table, and then it's the foreign key for the pledge table. I talk like this, and one of my people today looked at me and said, "Could you talk English?" So hopefully you're understanding it. Okay, so then we're going to bring over from the pledge table everything except donor ID. So we'll bring it all over, and we'll bring back pledge ID, donor ID from the pledge table. So it's the same as we just went over. Or you could just bring them over one at a time if you don't want to bring back one. So it doesn't really matter. And then we'll go forward. And it should be set up like this so that the information about like the company or the donor is first and then all the things that go under it is second. And then go next. And I think this one wanted another order. Additional grouping, fund code. Okay, so if you want additional grouping of fund code, this is how it works. Is this add? There you go. You got to double, or you double click, or you can push it over with the arrow. And see, it makes a little. So it'll have all the information about the donor, and then what fund code it's under, and then the pledge information about the donor. Go next, and we're going to sort on descending on total pledge. So we're going to go total pledge, and then descending, just click on it, and then go next. Align left 2, and I'll have that all there with and landscape, it's landscape, that'll be all on there. And then next, and then it'll say what style I want. Soft grays in here. And then next, and then you'll make it a name. And then finish. And then I'm not gonna have you insert a picture. I don't believe that's too important. So I might have you just then print out the first page of the report. And that's all. And then go back and get it and put your name on it. So if you know how to do all those things, I think you're fairly efficient in at least getting started in doing access. Okay, so now, is there any questions? Okay. Now we'll just do, since we're there, the review assignment for tutorial 4.34. And then the homework assignment you can bring in next week is the restaurant one. dineathome.course.com case 2 again for the forms and reports. Tutorial 4. But go ahead and you don't have to do number 2 because that's changing from one database to another, so you don't have to do that. And the recruit should be under review review up on the server. And I think everything else should be okay. Okay? And then when you're done, unless you want me to go over it, but most of the time, by the time you get done, if you've had trouble, you've already asked me what the trouble was. So you can leave if you don't want me to go over it. But if you want me to go over it, you can stay and I'll go over it. No big deal. Okay?
I have a question.
Okay.
Mine's only coming out of